Hello. Hello. Hi. Thank you and welcome to today's event. The Love Your Library program is designed to provide insight and inspiration from creatives in various industries to the FIT community and to connect FIT students and community with industry professionals, FIT alum, and authors. The program brings a wider world of ideas and possibilities into our academic experience through panel discussions, maker events, and book talks that reflect and celebrate the diverse interests of FIT community. Today, the library is excited to host a book reading and discussion between FIT Professor Yao Xiao and cartoonist Makee. Makee is a China-born cartoonist based in New York. She graduated from the School of Visual Arts in 2019. A passionate advocate for hand-drawn art, she conveys her voice through bold ink strokes and fluid watercolors. Makee's work often explores themes of everyday life, identity, and belonging, all infused with a sense of humor. When she's not drawing, you might find her reading or crocheting. Professor Yao is a writer and illustrator based in New York City. She is a MacDowell Fellow and the author of the graphic novel Everything is Beautiful and I'm Not Afraid, a Lambda Literary Award finalist. Her illustrations and writings have been published in The New Yorker, Los Angeles Times, Time, Catapult, Lit Hub, and Autostraddle. It's the first time I'm coming across that word. As a professor at the Fashion Institute of Technology, Yao teaches illustration and comics in the Illustration and Interactive Media Department, and she also leads the Manga and Anime in Japan Study Abroad program. Welcome to you both. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Jean, and thank you everyone for coming. I'm really glad that I can get Makee to FIT Library and to have a book event. So my intention, so as Jean said, I teach at FIT, and my intention is to bring Makee in as a guest and highlight her book, which came out last year. I've read her book. I was really moved by the story. It resonated a lot with me as also a first-generation Chinese immigrant. And then I really dreamed of this book event for a long time. I really wanted us to be in conversation. So today's talk, we're going to highlight Makee's work. I'm going to interview Makee. And then halfway through, I'm going to switch over. Makee will ask me some questions about my book, and I'll also do a little reading. And then at the end, Makee's book is for sale. So we'll explain a little more later. So the event will last till like 1:30-ish, and then we can like mingle and sign books. And there will be time for your questions as well. So yeah, welcome Makee to our FIT Library. You've made it. So let's talk about your book first. So you made a graphic novel. When did it come out?
My book came out last year in May. It's my debut graphic novel, and that's the cover.
Yeah, could you talk a little bit about your graphic novel? How long is it? What is it about?
Sure. My book, Call Me Emma, it was about my personal, it's mostly based on my life story. I came to the United States in New York when I was 16 with my family from China. Back then, like, pretty much none of us speak English. So it's a book about our immigration story, but each member of the family, me, my mom, my dad, my sister, we all went through this struggles in a different personal way. And my book explores themes of immigration, culture differences, because Chinese culture still is very different from American culture. I just directly came from China, and me and my sister, we went to a public high school in Queens. So that was like a completely different culture shock. And a lot of things we do, even the food we ate, the classes, the students, and American high school has this different hierarchy than I would say Chinese schools. So a lot of them is about the culture shock and culture differences. Also, as like a first generation immigrants, how each member of the family dealt with racism in different ways. Um, but I would say the book's most important thing and the concept I was trying to talk about was identity and self-acceptance. Because why I call the book Call Me Emma is because I realized not just Chinese immigrants, like immigrants when they come to a new country, a lot of times the first thing they do is they change their names to a more local name to trying to assimilate to that place to make their life easier. But I always feel like our given name tells people so much about who we are. And behind every name there's a story, there's identity, and there's like culture and your heritage. Changing that to an English name sometimes lose it. But I do agree everybody, every immigrant been through this differently. But my take in the book is like my character went through this whole journey of discovering about American life at the same time, finding what her identity really is. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. Do you want to show us one
Sure.
of the art from the book, and then we can look at the book while we talk. So I want to ask you about the process of getting to the point of
It's okay.
maybe we can start with when did it come about that you want to make a graphic novel? When did you have the idea that this is my story and this is my experience? I'm gonna make it a book. I'm gonna make a graphic novel. How did that idea come about?
Comics has always been my passion. I always like reading comics, and I went to art school. I went to School of Visual Arts. I graduated in 2019. As you know, like a lot of art school graduates, the first few years it's really like struggling to make ends meet and try to find jobs and make a living. So I worked as a textile designer right after I got off college for 5 years full time. So having a full-time job makes it almost impossible to do kind of like your own creative project. But I always draw short comics as a practice. So, you know, after work or at night or on the weekends, I use short comics as a good practice. You know, sometimes even like a four panel comics turn into a 6 panel, and it gets to 8 panels. So by doing those short comics, it builds up my skills, and I was able to practice my storytelling. But I always knew my dream is to have my own comic book on the shelf one day. And I always knew I wanted to do a longer format comic, like a whole book. A whole book is like 200 and more pages. I think it's impossible to do without kind of like, you know, using short comics as a practice. So I'm gonna show you a little bit more of my, how I get started. Yeah, these are like some of the examples. I used to serialize a weekly comics on Webtoon. It's really small, it's really simple. A lot of them are 4th-grade comics, but it shows my humor, it shows my personal take in my art. And a lot of them were about, I was like a very introverted person. I didn't like to social. So it's like slice of life. So my comics a lot of times are about slice of life. And how I got into my debut graphic novel is I knew I had to tell this story before any other stories because it's so crucial to my identity. I almost feel like there was like fire burning inside of me. I had to let it out to be able to write any kind of other fictional or non-fictional work. So the first long format comic, of course, is about the most crucial event that happened in my life was like my immigration story. But I came here when I was 16, and also same as Yao. We didn't come in the same year, but we both came when we were teenagers. So that was like already a tough time, and figuring all the culture and everything out was difficult. So that part was a big story. The most important things I learned in the 10 years of moving here. So how I started was I usually paste all the thumbnails. I finish my writing first. So I wrote everything, I finished my script, and then I started doing thumbnails. And I pasted all the work on the wall to give myself an idea of how this book gonna plan out. And on the right is usually my working process. The first step is always the thumbnail. It can be stick figures, it can be really simple. Nobody else than me can tell what's going on, but at least I know, there's some characters speaking and talking. But that's very important in comics, because comic is not like illustration where you just draw a pretty picture. Comic is sequential art. A lot of times it's about how the story flow, how the panels connect. Those things a lot of times can be even more important than just drawing a pretty or amazing picture. So that's like my step one. And my step two, I drew things on a much larger scale paper. So you can see in step two, you start to see heads, like people's characters. And I decided what the characters are saying. And I draw the speech bubbles and plan everything out. And step three is pencil. So in step three, things are 80% done. And I use a light box, so all my drawings are done traditionally. I'm a person who likes to do things old-fashioned way, but I just like the way to hold a pen or pencil and hear that line on the paper. So by step three, the pencil, I transfer it to a light box, and I trace the lines from step two. So by step three, everything is pretty clear. Sure.
I have a question about the steps, and I love this graphic way of showing the different steps. And I teach illustration and comics at FIT, so this is the kind of process that we do teach, and we're like, you're supposed to do a script first and do a thumbnail. And then I love how you have the steps so clearly. However, I was curious about how long each process take. Do they take the same amount of time, or how long did the scripting take, and how long did thumbnailing take? If you can talk a little bit about that.
My script actually wrote it really fast. I finished writing the whole story, I think, in a month, because it's pretty much autobiographical. So everything pretty much happened in real life. So for me, it's much easier to write than making things up like a fictional story. So I just I finished my script in a month, and then I move on to like paneling, to like thumbnailing. I think that took about a month too. But after I got all my thumbnails down, I just started to work. After you finish all the planning, it's really the execution. So for me, and I was working full time. I was working in the office from 9 to 6. So I tried to get, every day after I got back from work at home, after I ate dinner, I tried to get a page of at least this pencil sketch done, like step 3. So every night I tried to get, one page done, and the next day I'll pretty much ink it and finalize it. But the whole book took about, I would say, a year to finish. So I was working pretty dedicatedly, pretty fast. And I really gave myself a deadline, like several deadlines to follow, and I stuck to it. But basically I was doing like probably trying to finish a complete page a day and a half. That's like the speed I was going on. And because this book was so personal, it felt like nonstop. I feel like I was like burning. I couldn't really stop. If I stopped, and even though I was like commuting to my office in the morning, all I was thinking a lot of time was about my book, and I'm like outside on the street a lot of time I was thinking about the book. So I definitely think it's difficult, and if you're in any kind of process of writing something very important to you, you dive into it, there will be like a whole period of your life that you're a little obsessed with it until you're finished.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to it. I'm working on another book right now. It is also a graphic memoir. And there are lots of things that I'm so in awe of your process because you're so fired up and you're like writing a script in a month. So I'm just like, we're so different. But I was curious, what was the challenging part? Because for me, it was like, was it the script and then it's yeah, like what was the most challenging part or different parts of making this book in the whole process? You can talk about like any time from before you started to like when the book came out. In the whole process, what is some challenges?
I think one thing that's really challenging is to stuck to the plan because it's like a long period of time. I really try to stuck to my deadlines, even though it's very hard. And I think during the year I barely like socialize, and I met with my friends occasionally, but during that time I don't think I ever really went out to have a lot of fun. And because I was working full time, I mean right now I'm more like freelancer, so I have a lot more free time. But back then, that's like the kind of sacrifice I made for the book. And another challenging thing is, in my story I wrote about my sister's mental illness, and I treated it like it was something in the past. But when I was about to finish the book, I had my last chapter, so about 40 pages left. My sister had another relapse, so she went back to the psychiatric institution. So that was like the hardest part because she hasn't had a relapse in 5 years, and we all thought, she was recovering, but relapse they do come and they always come worse. So mentally that was really tough for us. But luckily, eventually she got out again, and now she's being like fine. And but it's just like sometimes when you're writing a story, you're trying to separate your life, having some distance from it. Even though it's personal story, I gave my characters fictional names. Because I'm trying to let it be a little safer for me, but your real life, like stuff still are so unpredictable happen, and you have to balance all aspects of your life, either work or study, your comics, also your family member might be sick. So I think balancing that all will eventually hit your goal to finish the book. Yeah, I'm not the kind of person who like to give up and like in the middle of my project. So in the end, stuck to it, finished the last 40 pages was really the most challenging and exhausting part of my book.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I know it's a very very personal story. I was curious. Did you at any point realize if you decided to change a part of the story? How do you do with revision? Did you change anything in the writing process?
I think I did, but not that much. I changed like details, and the way I write is I wrote a lot of like plots. So sometimes I move things around, and I show it to my friends or my editor, like so. But mostly I think like I changed the sequence of event to make the story flow better. We revised details to make the story more readable and clearer to the audience. But I think this book, the writing part was really go like really all together, so it flows from beginning to the end. So that part, like the big structure, didn't really change that much.
It's again, I am so jealous of how this works. But I'm really glad to hear there's so many different writing styles, and there's so many different lives, I think, and so many different experiences. And I think it's really good to have to hear from the authors themselves how it works. It's not all the same. It's very different. We want to hear you read some part of your work. Before we go into the reading, do you want to talk about anything more about this book, and then maybe about what we are about to see you read? Anything else you want to share?
I think I'll share one thing is I read a lot of memoir and autobiographic work, and I always appreciate how honest the authors are. And I think you can tell if you are reading someone who are not honest. I think people can immediately tell. So I think for anyone who likes memoirs and who want to write autobiographic work, the question you have to think is like how honest I can be and how much dark side of myself I can show. And it's not mandatory because, of course, you can do fictional work, but if you choose to do autobiographic work, that's definitely the most important question to consider. Yeah, we don't really want to read autobiographic comic that's just like you're just like telling people how wonderful your life is. Most of the time, it's like you have to be very vulnerable and show them the shittiest things happen in your life, but make fun of them. Yeah.
That's really amazing. I think that's something that we after you making the book itself, and then you still come away with that advice is you have to be ready to be really vulnerable. You have to be ready to be really honest. And actually, readers can tell if someone isn't being fully themselves on the page. Yeah. So I think.
I forgot to show these.
Ah,
I'll
okay.
just go through
Yeah. And then we can get to the reading.
Yeah. So here are a few slides I want to show you. It's really fun. It just shows my everything is done in paper, so that's like how much work comic book can cost. And that's my work. On the left are my originals, and on the right is how it finally looked like after it's digitally like I added usually I added screen tones in Photoshop, but everything else is done on paper. And because this book is about my high school, like a lot of it was happened in my high school. I actually went back to Queens and took a lot of reference pictures. That's my high school on the left, and those are the places that appear in the book. I think it makes the book feel much more realistic because the character actually live in their own world. So those are all the places we've been to. Okay, and now we can do. I'm gonna do a little reading. My family in America were all on my mom's side. They have been living in the U.S. for over a decade. So my mom's younger sister, grandma and grandpa, and mom's older sister. My aunts were both married to white men, lived a standard middle-class life, and became very Americanized. Hi, my niece. How are you? Why does she speak English with me? I'm okay. Strong perfume. We only celebrated holidays together. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Come on in. A real tree. Here are your presents. Thank you. It's a pajama set. Nice. What did you get? A bag of makeup? But we don't wear makeup. Mom, did you prepare gifts for my cousins? I don't know what to buy, so I put some cash in red packets. I guess that's fine. Cheers! Try some pasta, it's gluten-free. What's gluten-free? Can I have a pair of chopsticks? No problem. Honey, can you pass me the chopsticks and the ladle for the soup? It's ladle, not ladle. Okay, ladle. Let me help you clean the table. Thanks. I sent lots of resumes out, but almost no one replied. It's not resume, pronounced as resume. Oh, okay, resume. Actually, we want to buy a condo, but our savings aren't enough. Our money is all in the stock market. Plus, you can always ask the bank. Bye. Goodbye. I tried asking my sister about borrowing money. She basically said no. Of course not. Mom? Why is American family not as close as Chinese family? What kind of family is this? I'm not sure. Maybe it's American culture. Did you know that? My older sister, your Aunt Evelyn, came to America alone in the 1990s with only a few $100s. She started from the bottom and worked herself up. She attended law school and became an immigration lawyer after graduation. Eventually, she opened her own law firm. Firstly, Evelyn applied your grandparents to the U.S., then my younger sister, your Aunt Mia. She got Mia a work visa so Mia could come and work for her. But they didn't get along. Well, you know how Evelyn is like. She has a strong personality. According to your grandma, they had a big fight in the office one day. Evelyn threw papers over Mia's face and Mia quit right away. 20 years have passed and their relationship never recovered. They don't even talk to each other much now. Perhaps that's why our family is so alienated. I don't think families should ever work for each other. Your grandma also said in China, relatives were too close, that it only caused drama and trouble. Mom, what's your point? My point is that there are different boundaries in America. Here, people are much more independent. I think that's all for the little parts in the book.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Makee. I think there are some parts where it really reminds me of families in China as well. Something that I've experienced too is the success arc that some people have done it, and it sounds really amazing to come here with a couple $100 and now they like have a house. It does happen. I think that maybe that's a part of the problem. But yeah, thank you so much for reading. So I have some follow-up questions about your interest in graphic novel. So you actually run a podcast about graphic novels. And I've been a listener to it since it started. So can you tell a little more about how long you've been running this podcast and what is it and how did it come about?
Yep. So I do many things. So I do freelance, I have part-time job, and I also run a podcast. It started with an idea 4 years ago. I had this online comic chat group, like people recommend comics and stuff, and there I met a girl online, and she's very active, and I liked the way she talked, but I never really met her in person, although she's still in Beijing, so I'm in New York. We have this 12-hour time differences, but I think I have good instinct in people, and I like how we both share this passion for graphic novels. So I reached out to her and recommended to her, maybe we can try talking about comics. We can try a podcast talking about comics. And the reason I wanted to have a friend because to be honest, I prefer to be a listener a lot of the times. And she's a teacher, so she definitely likes to talk. So I think that really works out. So we just have this idea, and and we went for it. So it's like starting your own band. We just picked some of our favorite graphic novels, and we aim to introduce more Western graphic novels to Chinese audience because comic is kind of like a niche, right? And graphic novel is even smaller than that. A lot of people in China don't really know about comics can be for adults. They can be really deep and mature, not just for kids. They have this stereotypical idea. So we started running it and we get along really well. So each episode we talk about one great graphic novels. We have cover books like Art Spiegelman's Mouse, Persepolis, and a lot of like more indie American graphic novel, and sometimes even Korean comics, European comics, a lot of French comics are really good. So one episode we talk about one comic. So it's been growing and we still do it every month. But it's definitely not easy because we have this 12-hour time differences. So our podcast name is Comic No Jet Lag because even though we have time differences, we want it to be universal. So people listen to it, they don't feel the jet lag. And that's been really fun. And it's a great way for me as an author to read more carefully and to really dive into each author's story and to research their background. So I've also been having a lot of fun and learning so much. Yeah, that's the story behind the podcast.
Can people subscribe to it, and where can they find it? And it is in Chinese, I think. Yeah, I listened to it. Yeah, yeah. Do you want to talk about where can they find it? How often? Yeah.
But the podcast it's in Chinese though. So if you don't speak Chinese, I don't think you can listen to it. But if you do, you can find it on an app called 小宇宙, and we update it every monthly. So it's like a monthly update.
Yeah, and speaking of graphic novels, because you and I both grew up in China, I think I'm maybe 10 years older than you, so there's big lapse in like generational in terms of like comic influences. And comic is such a pop medium, so it's very immediate, and I would say it's a little like pop music, or I kind of feel like it's like hip hop sometimes. There's like 90s and there's like 80s. It is really, really different in every generation. So I was curious, because when I grew up in China, I read a lot of Japanese comics, but very few American comics. And there were also a lot of comics from Hong Kong. That's a little more like superhero style, but they were Chinese heroes. And I think I did read Korean comics as well. And then when I came to America, I started to read more indie comics. So that path, I feel like we have some similarity in how we are able to appreciate all of them. So can you talk a little bit about the comics that inspire you, and what inspired you to be into comics in the first place, and what is the more like later on inspiration?
Sure. It's so good to know we all grew up reading comics. I was born in the 1997, so I think Japanese anime influenced generations of Asian kids. I mean, even American kids watch them. So Naruto and One Piece were what got me into comics. I was just like so observed into their fantastical world. But what really made me start to draw like my own comics was a Japanese artist called Taiyu Matsumoto. He's considered a little bit more alternative in Japan, and he's famous internationally too. But it's this book called Sunny really, really captured my heart. They were like, it's fictional, but after you get to know about the author, it's actually pretty much autobiographical. He was sent to an orphan house when he was around like 10 years old. and that experience ultimately changed his life. And in this comic, um, it's not like too sad to read because instead of like saying all the sad things because they were like kids waiting to be adopted, a lot of reasons their family couldn't pick them up. So it's a sad thing, but the way he wrote about it is so beautiful and so poignant. He basically just showed everyday life of these children, and one character was based on his younger self. So when I read it, of course it's beautiful, but it also just touches me so much. It made me realize comic cannot only be about fantastical things. It cannot only be about monsters or fighting, actions, romance. It can also be like people around you and things happen in your life. It can be mundane, but as long as you make it interesting, and you can make people laugh and cry. So I read a lot of comics now. I read anyone, if it's good. I don't care if it's graphic novel or comics or Japanese or American or Chinese. As long as the story is really touching, I will give it a read. But I would say his art is just so beautiful. LC Taiyo Matsumoto really made an impact. It really made me start to draw comics.
Yeah, that's amazing. I've been reading his new book, Tokyo Higoro. It's actually my first time reading his work. I just immediately pulled in. It was recommended to me at the comic store. I think before I was a little intimidated by his style, but I definitely want to check out Sunny. I think your interest in comics is very inspiring to me, and I think a lot of people who love comics and love drawing is to be really open about the medium. It's not defined by age group and genres, even though they do come across that way when you shop for them. But when you're a reader, you really can just appreciate all of them without the boundaries that set them apart. So I think maybe it's a little time for you to ask me questions. I can like switch if you want.
Yes.
Or I think. Yeah. Okay, how's everyone doing? It's good. Okay, thank you. You're such a great audience. We're gonna talk about my book, but it will be faster, and then we can break and we can answer a lot of your questions. So if you have any questions, you can kind of think about them. Okay.
So I also just love Yao's work. Also, I forgot to say thank you for. Yeah. I forgot to say thank you for Yao and Jen for hosting this event. It's been amazing. So I love reading Yao's book. Everything is beautiful, and I'm not afraid. It came out in 2020. Can you tell us a little bit more about your book and what's the story about?
Yeah, thank you, Makee. My book is about living in America as a Chinese immigrant. It's autobiographical, but as I would read some to you, it's really more like comic strips and poetic fragments of thoughts. I think that's how I would describe it. I think these two books are so different, which I'm really glad that we can talk about them side to side. Because my book, I wanted to capture the feeling of coming of age, but in a very different place than the one that I expected to grow up in. I came to America also as a teenager, also at the age of 16. So that experience is similar, but it is different because I did come as a student and my parents stayed in China. And that decision was also kind of a very fast decision. So I certainly didn't expect to be spending the rest of my life here, and my parents also didn't expect for us to live different lives. So there is kind of a space where those ideas are still being considered while it's already happening, if that makes sense. I think I was still deciding if I have really left home, but I've already been living away from home. And I think for my parents, they were still kind of deciding if their child has really left, but yeah, we don't live together anymore. So I think that experience is unique. So the way that I chose to, or the only way I felt like I can depict it, is very immediate. It's very internal. It's very difficult to write about it narratively. It's a little hard to define what the story really is. Besides that, I did leave home at 16, but this book is about a moment that happened when I was 24, I think, which I chose I chose to discuss my sexuality with my mom, and I thought it was gonna be really fun because I have been living in the States, and we haven't really talked about anything. So my parents wanted me to find a marriage partner, and then I just realized after that point, we live in such different worlds and we never talked about it. So now what? So that's kind of my story. It's like a sad but also comical, but also a very non-linear read.
How long did it take you to like draw the whole thing? And I know it's like composed of parts, right? Parts of short story into a long one. Like overall, how many like years have you spent like on this book?
Yeah, I'm gonna see if I have any. Yeah, so the book is made of one page or several page one-off comics. So I started doing these. Yeah, I think I started doing these in 2014, and it took me 4 years to make all of the comics that eventually made it into this collection. So I also didn't expect it to become a book. I didn't expect to go on for so long. So eventually I did this comic strip for 10 years. So the website I was serializing on was called Autostraddle, and it's a queer women's website, or for anyone who likes girls. I think that's originally what it was. It got recently bought by a huge tech company, so I'm not doing anything on there anymore. But they let me basically do a monthly column. It can be whatever I wanted, for 10 years. So it was amazing. So yeah, it's a long time. So this book is like at the 4 year point. Things just kind of happened, and then I think I had editors and my agent approach me to be like, "You want to make a book?" So I was like, "Yeah, let's do it." Yeah, so it wasn't like an outline. Yeah, so different.
You're gonna read.
Should I? Let's see. Do you want to? Yeah, I can read, or if you have any other questions
sure.
before.
So before the reading, I want to ask you. So in comics, what media do you like to use, and why?
Yeah, I like to, when I was working on this book, I used pen on paper. I actually used a Sharpie, and then I was drawing on printer paper. I really wanted to be a little closer to how immediate I can get to with drawing. I study illustration as well, also at SBA, and I had a very detailed and very careful illustration style. And I was working as an illustrator, and that style was it's very good for finding work. But I was feeling a little like that's not really how I like to draw. So I really wanted to free myself from how careful that process is. So I really just like to use pen on paper, and then I don't do any penciling or anything. I just draw them. So a lot of these comics, I don't think I had any pencil. I just like draw them, or I'll make a little sketch and then I would draw them. So I think I could read, and then we can talk a little more. So yeah, maybe I'll start with. I'll, yeah, I'll start with this one. Is kind of small, so I'll read it for you, and then this is one of the second pages in the book. I live an independent life at the cost of ignoring the baggage I carry. I make my own choices, nothing wrong with that. New secret on top of old ones. We're all free to be what we want to be. Is my freedom just an illusion? What unanswered questions lie ahead? You only live once. It's okay to be a little selfish. It feels so much more complicated. And I'll read a few shorter comics. There is no more home. Sometimes I feel this loneliness, like I don't have a home. There's no place to go back to, no one to go home to. At the end of all of this, it's just myself, you know? It's true. Once you leave, there is no home anymore. It's just a choice between a place you can't call home and a place to live that is not your own. I have so many secrets. Mother, I have so many secrets. I know you have many secrets too. Don't worry. Nothing happens here. Except my secrets turn into yours. Your secrets turn into mine. Family reunion. So there are a few comics I'm presenting that don't have words, so I will show them. This is a family reunion. Choose your box. Choose your box. I don't want to choose a box. I'm just hanging out. Is that okay? I was shaken off my feet and I saw the pieces. How did I get so fragmented? I must pick them up piece by piece and look closely to see myself. I was afraid to dig at first, startled by what I found, anxious about what I may find, hesitating above that impenetrable surface. When I started digging, my hands ventured deeper and deeper, until I found a whole other world under my feet. So this is all the reading, and then I can talk a little more. Yeah, if you want.
I just love how beautiful and poetic Yao's work reads like, and it's really powerful. You know, sometimes there's no words at all, but you feel all the emotions. I want to ask you a question that's related to Chinese New Year, because we just celebrated Chinese New Year. So it's during this month, and it's one of the biggest holidays in China. How do you feel about having more graphic novels about the Chinese diaspora? Do you read any other books that inspire you, in particular, when it comes to the Chinese immigrant experience?
Yeah, thank you. I want to say how much I appreciate your book. I feel like, as you've seen my book, this is the only book that I have put out, but I read comics all the time, so there's definitely a gap, I feel like, of how much story that we haven't read, we haven't seen out there in the world. I can really feel that there is a lot, but it's very challenging to put out personal narrative books like this in China. And in America, there are different challenges, I think. So I'm really glad to see every new book that is about a similar experience. I go and read it, and I feel like the book really speaks a lot of things that I didn't know how to express for me, and then I think that's what books are for. And a book like yours really helped me see the experience that I had going to an American high school and to navigate American and Chinese culture in such a authentic and specific way. So every time that happens, I feel like I feel a little less pressure when I'm writing my book. Because when you work on a book, there's a lot of demands to represent the experience if there's not enough other books. You have to explain everything. And in my experience, I don't think it's very like a representative, or we are all like so weird. So it's like it's definitely not gonna be the book that people want without knowing like who the people are and what they want. I don't know, but it just kind of have that feeling like I can't like speak for anyone else. I can only speak for me. But when you're publishing as a less represented author, there's definitely that pressure. I think I'm more sensitive to it, and I feel like my story is like you can bend it every which way, and we as people can be bent every which way. I don't want to do that. So I'm really glad to see more books such as your book to come out, and I'm really excited to spread the words about them. Yeah, I think I have, yeah, these are a couple of the pages of the kind of comics that I've been making. They have a little more Chinese in them. And I know it's very, very challenging to publish books that has two languages, but I really wanted to represent just how I think on a daily basis, how, like what percentage or like how much. It really goes in and out. So it goes from like kind of all English to like Chinese English, and then it's like Chinese and English, and it will be all Chinese. So I think it's tough to say like being authentic on the page and be really, really honest on the page, because sometimes I think it's a little hard to make it legible. So I have some examples of the graphic novels that inspired me. Um, One of the books is Almost American Girl by Robin Ha. This book it came out before 2020, I think. I was really inspired by this book, and the author also talked about an experience coming to America when she was 14, moving with her family. So that also helped me put a lot of things into context. And I love Nindi Chandani's Pashmina, just the kind of like really interesting story and character building. I like how lighthearted it is as a read. And then I think we're all very inspired by Art Spiegelman. His autobiographical comics, Breakdowns, I like it. It's very different from reading Mouse. He's really just like playing with the form and like pushing what he can say on the page, which I really like. And then yeah, this is a little bit of my process. I don't know what my slides are. Do you have any other things you want to
Do you have more slides to show how beautiful your drawings are?
I think it's just this one.
That's the last.
Yeah, there's another one. Oh, I've also been doing daily comics. I've also been doing daily comics since last year. I did like 160 something. I do one every day. One of the reasons that I started doing daily comics is I really want to represent my real life. And I went to school, I went back to graduate school for creative writing, and I wrote a lot of memoir pieces about my parents and our grandparents and then our life back in China. But my teacher asked me a lot to represent my current, like the present. It was just very weird and hard for me. I had this feeling that it's just not worth talking about, and then I know that's not true. So I started doing this once a day. I have to say I do feel more comfortable just about what I do on a daily basis now. I'm okay that other people know. Like I'm just more okay with it now. But I'm still kind of
Still going on.
yeah, it's still going on. So I really want to get to a year and then just see what happens. So I did 161, so it's like half a year. I know I can do it. Yeah, I'll do it.
How long does one usually take?
It's like maybe half an hour.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I just I don't sketch, so I just draw it.
It's amazing that you do one every day. It's a big project, to do it here. I know you're also a writer. I have read your essays before, and I just want to know, like, what do you think are the advantages comparing comics? We have images to just writing itself. Um, which one? How do you like them differently? And what's like the advantage of comics?
Yeah, I think the advantage of comic, or just like how it hits people differently. Comic definitely reach people so much faster than writing can. So I think in terms of the advantage of their like running marathon, like writing is like slow reading, and comics is like a punch you in the face before you even know what it's about. So it reaches people so fast. And writing is more like on the sentence level, crafting a good sentence, like the work happens within one sentence. I think comics is, we definitely also write really concise, really great lines, but also the work within a panel, there is acting, and there is graphically how the composition moves people. So I think it's a much more multidisciplinary art. You have to at least draw a little bit, not like really well, but drawing like how the line moves. So I think in literature, like written literature, there is more because of how shorter our attention span has become. There's more effort to make literary pages that is more visual. But in comics, we're just already there. So I do think it makes me feel really free as a writer. It's like the page is like your friends. You can like do whatever you want. It's not like this enemy that you have to fill. So I felt great when I studied writing. When I started writing, I never really felt like it was like punishing or really hard. Yeah, I think our discipline as visual artists really trains us for so many other things that we don't even know. Or like I think comics is a little, yeah, it just like uses a lot of different parts of your brain. Kind of at the end there. Let me see if I have anything else. Yeah, let's yeah, here's some. I'm just gonna leave it here because these are books that I really inspire me. But I want to, because folks are here for a while, want to ask your if you have any questions for us. We can talk a little more about them. Isabel, come go. You're in my class. Do you want
So for both of you, what was the process of finding a publisher like?
Okay. So I'll go first. It's very like period drama, like so it was like 2016, so we were all on like Twitter and Instagram. So when you have like a piece that goes viral, it still was like a big deal, I think. So I have one of the comic strips that I did. It just went like crazy viral. It was like global viral. It was like translated into a lot of languages. So I did get agents and publishers to approach me to expand it into a book. So that's like the first time I heard about the idea of like you can expand the whole one page into a book. They don't mind that it's like one single idea. But from there, it's really not linear because I didn't actually do anything with that initial agent, and then he stopped being a literary agent, or we just didn't end up working together. And then I had another publisher approach me, and of the same idea, but I didn't have an agent. So then I think my friends gave me some advice to go query agents because you have a publishing offer and that's easier. And then my current agent, she was, yeah, she just like accepted my query really quickly. And then we found Andrews McNeil instead of the initial people. So I think it's kind of a train reaction, and I think it was during a time that the world was like ready for it. It's a very quiet book, so I was very surprised. So I think it was just like a gift to myself because yeah, I did a lot of like crazy stuff when I was younger. So I was like, I'm really glad I have a book, but I wasn't like career like strategic about it. But Makee, you can talk a little more.
Oh wow. My book, how I found a publisher was a completely different story because I finished the whole book at first, and then I realized it's much easier to get it published if you have an agent. So next step for a lot of new authors is to find an agent that willing to represent you. So I just like look online and find a list, build a list of agents who are interested in the kind of story of my book, and I cold emailed, I think around 70 agents and a few publishers. They take unsolicited submission, which means like only I think a few publishers you can email them your work directly. Otherwise, having an agent will really increase your chance. So I did that. It took me a long time to find an agent that's in the end that willing to sign with me. Like a lot of people, they either reject you or they don't think your story is a fit. So it was like a really long and kind of upsetting process. It's very struggling, but I think it's so true to a lot of new authors. But this, how the story ends is like in the end I was ready to sign with the agent in UK, but after he sent me the contract, I feel like it wasn't really fair to me as an independent artist. It felt like the agency has much more power over my work. So, after almost like 8 months of looking for agent, I almost signed with him, but in the end, it didn't work out. So after that, I went to Mocha. So there's like a different strategy. It's like I went to Mocha, and I was like talking to a few publishers, and then I came to my publisher. I find her. She's in the audience. I find her and I talked to her, and she was like, "Oh, send me your work. It sounded very interesting." So that's what I did. I emailed her my book. I already finished the whole thing. And most people don't do that. Most people don't finish a whole book and look for publishers. So I think what I did is like completely different from Yao, and each author kind of, in the end, find their publishers in a different way. But miraculously, she really liked my work, and within a year and a half, the book was edited, and eventually it was published. But if I could ever recommend, I think going to comic festivals to meet people in real life, I think helps it a little better chance rather than cold emailing and find people online. But I did both, so I know how hard it is. I hope that answers your question. And any other questions?
My question, it kind of answered my question. So the first way of doing it, you said that you had a publisher interested and then you needed to find an agent. How much of your story or pitch did you already have done before you found the agent? How much of the concept was realized before that happened?
Yeah, thank you. So I think your question is like before people started approaching, what is the stage of the work that people might be interested in? So I had this like monthly comic strip. So I had all the work. I think for me, like this is like my personality too. I always felt like people don't see my work the way I see it. So I was like kind of panicking, like, because a couple people that approached me, they saw my work as this very like healing, like sunny, like how to live your best life comic strip. And then I don't know, I was like writing, I felt like it was very like melancholy and fragmented and like kind of like things that make me sad, or I felt like it was like deeper and more emotional. That's how I would describe it to myself. So I don't have like any other work. So to everyone that inquired, I did send them just everything to date. It's like not, I didn't put it into the sequence that eventually it was a book. I did send them like all of the strips that I have ever done. So there is that like huge volume of work. It was like a lot of finished work. And then I was kind of like, can we talk about this or can we imagine this? So I think I kind of like don't remember exactly, but there's definitely like publishers that my agent and I approached that were like hoping for more narrative or just like not a good fit for them. But then we did find someone that it's a good fit, so I did make some new comics to kind of like pull things together. I think it's similar to Makee is that we both had like finished work already, and then to get it published. It's very different from like realizing a book pitch from scratch, which I am working on now, but it's a very different process. I've never done that before, so it really is different, like your first book and how that comes around.
Also, I think like any kind of first book is usually like you had a lot of passion for it, so you had to get like working on it. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there another question that we can answer?
May I have a question?
Yes, please.
Certainly, you're just in our class named Leather. It's about criticize artwork or impress yourself art series, something like that. Yeah, right now we come to the concept global artist. Yeah, so how do you think about this concept for after the contemporary art?
Thank you so much for that question. So how do you think of the concept of a global artist in contemporary art? Yeah, do you want to answer first? Yeah.
Like a hard question to answer. Global artists. I think nowadays with the advantage of technology and social media, it's not like old times, you know, really great artists sometimes are getting lost in the history because nobody knew them, you know, from like the other side of the earth. But I think nowadays with social media and technology, artists have much more chance to be seen internationally and globally. And I think we can use that advantage to make our art more seen and to connect with more audience. That's my take.
Yeah, I think a global artist means the artist can have more agency over who can see their work. So you have more audience, and then our globe is such a big. Yeah, just like there's so many people, and the problem is just that your art is not reaching them. So there's a lot more potential ways for your work to reach people that's not this like a local audience or the American audience, and I think that makes it more creative because you don't like basically you're speaking to an audience that is so diverse. You don't have to make anything specifically to like please a certain type of people because you just don't know who is reading. And I think that is true for American readers also because American readers are very diverse. So I always make work like not expecting it to be read by just like one specific type of person, or I don't write it for like the editor who at the New Yorker or something. Like I think it really should like you shouldn't assume who's reading, and you never know who is gonna touch and in what way, because the world is so big and there are things happening every day that can be similar to your experience. So yeah, I'm hopeful about that idea, I think. Yeah, so yeah, I was gonna ask the last thing that we can both talk about is if we have any advice for aspiring artists or people who want to get their work out there. I think we touched on it a lot, like very specifically, but like is there any like yeah, just like pep talk advice? Yeah.
Sure. I'm usually not the kind of people who like to give advice because I know everybody is at a different stage of their life and we all been through things so differently. But if something I have learned from the journey of publishing my first book is I think just do it because talk is very cheap. You know, if you have a dream project, start today. You know, don't wait. Always just like make it happen. And also, I think challenge yourself, try different things, have a lot of hobbies. I think they'll help you open new doors and new ways. I think one thing very practical for me is, and I'll also talk about it, is to break down a big project into smaller projects because often we have a goal that's so ambitious, but it's also very terrifying. Now we almost just we give up because it's so big. But if you break it down into very small chunks, so instead of saying, oh, I want to write a book by like 2028, change it to I want to write the first chapter by next month, and I want to write maybe the next one by next month. So it makes the whole thing much more doable. And I still struggle with it. I'm writing my second story. So that's the thing I still tell myself to break down things to smaller projects. The last thing I want to say is remember what got you started because I went to school for illustration, but I realized illustration is not what I really want to do. I always loved comics. I watched it when I was a kid. That's what got me started in art. So no matter what you do, you like fashion, music, art, visual art, or films, remember what were your interests as a kid and what got you started. I think if you really enjoy what you're doing, no matter you make money, a lot of money or no money at all, at least you find joy, at least you find happiness in the things you do. So that's my advice, and I love to hear about Yao's advice.
Yeah, I think I'll keep it like kind of short, but mostly because I'm in the writing process myself, is kind of a writing advice. Is when you're writing, I used to struggle a lot about who's gonna read it because that problem is like you know that you want this book to be out there, but then if you think about who you're writing for, you get really stuck about how those people will think of your work, and then people will tell you you shouldn't think about that. So it's kind of this like loop, like what am I supposed to do? But I now I kind of see it in like two aspects, and they're just both true. It's one that when I'm writing, I have to assume that no one's gonna read it, and then that advice I hear a lot, and it is very useful, is to create like no one's gonna read it. It makes you really, really honest, and you don't worry about this like outside noise. You don't think about, am I gonna be famous, or am I gonna like do this and that. You just write like no one's gonna ever read it. And then you also need the hope that people will read it, and then that gives you the hope that your work deserves to be told, or your story will get out there. And this kind of makes me think like, this is kind of a dark term, but when you like think of like the like authoritarian government, and then one of the first things that they do is like shut down the press. Like I used to be like, why they shut down the press? Like I don't know, like why is that so important? But people will actually stop writing if they don't think there's any place for it to go. They will like eventually think that, yeah, if they're really excited about this story, there's no place to send it to. You do lose the drive to keep doing it. So you do need a community of readers, of publishers, booksellers, places like journals. So you do need a list of places that you can realistically see your work be in. So you can't just write like no one's gonna read it. You just have to think no one's gonna read it when you're making it, and then when you're done, or like when you're writing, kind of think about like, oh, I want to show this to Makee, or I want to show this to my friend, or I want to submit it to this journal, and that editor is gonna like, I really want to know what she thinks. So I think both are true, and then it will help that energy to keep going. So yeah, that's my advice. So I think we're really good. Thank you everyone for being with us. Thank you Makee for being an awesome guest. So Makee is gonna sign book over here. You can purchase her book and she can sign it. You can buy my book, but we don't have the physical ones. So the bookseller can tell you can pay for it, and then I can sign it later. They'll ship it to you, but she can talk about that. So, but Makee has her book and she can sign it. Thank you everyone for coming.